Some of my favorite movies have no title, at least none I've heard before. I don't know the stars' names or even really what they look like. Their backs are always turned to the camera or their heads are cut off at the top of the frame. And as much as I'd love for you to watch them, they won't be easy to find. They're not in theaters or on streaming. You can't pirate them or track down a DVD. I've only ever managed to catch them in unassuming locales. Once in the back of a bookstore, once upstairs at a library, twice projected onto walls of community centers. Each time they pop up somewhere, a cult audience gathers and soaks up every frame, knowing that watching them any other way would be dangerous. These screenings were put together by a collective of queer filmmakers from the global south, mostly Africa. They call themselves 75 Shots, 75 after the number of countries that criminalized homosexuality back when they started. And their work involves training queer people in these countries to make films about their lives. Because of the danger these filmmakers face if their work ends up in the wrong hands, some of the collective's most essential works are only ever screened at these small, in-person events. In turn, as nice as it would be to show you the movies I'm talking about, I really can't. It's actually kind of fitting though, because even when I'm sitting down and watching them, I get the sense these films cannot fully reveal themselves to me. Safety concerns force the filmmakers to vague everything out by scrubbing details like faces and names, and also to shrink the scopes of their projects. Some only shoot inside their homes to ensure nobody overhears them. Something you pick up on after watching a few is how these choices nudge every film a few steps into the surreal. The filmmakers cannot give a full account of who they are, so instead they tell us about the life they wish they had, the society they dream of living in. Even then, there's no obvious place to point the camera because the things they're describing don't exist yet. To call it unsatisfying would be too harsh. This is vital art made under inhumane constraints. But it's also clear just how much more these filmmakers could be doing in a just society. And I like that they don't shield me from that ache, the distance. I like how many end on an unresolved note, that the subject will keep going, but has no idea when they'll get there. If you're left wanting more, then want it. Is that such a bad thing? Do you mind rewinding to the start, Vic? Thank you. Early 2025, it's a new moment for the trans community and an eerily quiet one. Our place in society, hotly contested for as long as I can remember, suddenly seems less so. The shouting has died down, the fearmongers have begun stalking other wares, because the transgender debate they fueled has largely served its purpose. A level of disdain for us has been absorbed into the liberal consensus and is being written into law as a matter of apolitical common sense. For trans people, the silence has not been a reprieve. People I know are afraid, desperate, frantically trying to move countries or stockpile medication. There's a sense that we have lost, at least for now. And I get the sense many of us are looking around trying to figure out where it all went so wrong. The current state of things can't have been inevitable, right? Surely a better world at least was possible. If decades of tireless activism couldn't prevent us from ending up here, we must have been making some fundamental mistake the whole time, something we can correct for in this new moment to keep things from getting even worse. I've heard a lot of theories as to what exactly that mistake was. Some people insist that we went too broad, validating people who weren't really trans in a way that diluted our message. Others say we were too confrontational to the public and alienated people who otherwise would have supported us. But most often, I'm hearing our failure attributed to a politics of visibility. As this argument goes, until recently, trans activism had been making slow, steady progress. Over decades of organizing, our communities had secured healthcare, won legal protections, and done so without drawing too much attention to themselves. Then, around 2014, things changed drastically with the transgender tipping point, and the public started taking notice. We found ourselves with heaps of trans celebrities and public figures, activists with global platforms, and, thanks to social media, a way for regular people to make themselves heard. What happened next? Within 18 months, a backlash began that would successfully brand us as child groomers, mainstream the idea of trans extermination, and undo many of the gains we made 10, 30, 50 years earlier. It's hard not to draw a line between the two.
People all around the world were amazed by Laverne's cover story. However, for the girls who have to live on the streets and off their wits, this was not something that was beneficial to their existence. What I have noticed since that happened is that there are more girls being murdered or beaten up because the people who want to do these harmful things can't get to Laverne Cox. She's in a world that they can't even dream about approaching. She's basically out of their reach with the security that she has. Girls like me, we don't have that security. So somebody can really dislike the fact that trans is gaining acceptance and think, oh, there's a trans girl on the cover of Time. Oh, there's one of those trans bitches there, and go and kill her. Another trans woman pays the price for what the media is applauding and the world is getting all happy over. There are two sides to every fucking coin. Nothing is as simple as it appears to be.
This perspective holds that the public eye stares down the barrel of a gun, and that 10 years of pop stars and public outreach have only provided transphobes with a more accurate target. While a minority of trans people have done well for themselves in this era, raking in millions from book deals, consulting fees, sponsorships, they've done so at the direct expense of the majority in what's arguably an act of class war. Not all of us want to be seen. Looking for other paths forward, who do we find but those firebrands of the 20th century, the world's Sylvias, Crystals, and Miss Majors, who didn't have the public's eye, but who we figured didn't want it? They were able to accomplish so much, keeping trans people healthy and safe, without bothering to ask anyone permission. This suggests one way out of our current crisis. We stop making a point of being seen, in fact, actively move underground, and eventually the public will forget about us again. That means disengaging from the media, moving off public platforms onto places like Signal, maybe even winding down public rallies and events, at least for a little while. Nobody says it's pretty. No one says it's easy either. But when someone's pointing a gun at you, you don't give them your good angles. You duck for cover.
I swear, someday soon, I am just gonna disappear. And you won't have any idea what happened to me.
We're All Going to the World's Fair is a film by Jane Schoenbrunn about a teenager named Casey who lives in the woods with her dad in near total isolation. Even her dad we never actually see. As the film sketches an outline of a life in a sleepy New England town, for the most part, Casey feels like its only resident. Every word she speaks in the film is either to herself, into a camera, or into the black expanse of a Skype call. To fill her endless free time, Casey enlists herself into an online role-playing game known as the World's Fair Challenge. In the fiction of this game, smearing a pinprick of blood across your webcam and reciting the phrase, "I want to go to the World's Fair," will cause your body and mind to transform in grotesque ways. In the first scene, Casey takes the challenge. From there, we watch her upload videos chronicling her symptoms as they emerge and intensify.
Hey guys, Casey here. Welcome to my channel.
This is a big undertaking on Casey's part, but only one person really takes note. a fellow role player known as JLB, who says he's worried by Casey's symptoms and urges her to keep posting so that he can keep an eye out. JLB, as we're shown and Casey infers, is a much older man in a community otherwise composed of teenagers. But he listens. He expresses concern for Casey's emergent symptoms, and while it's implied they both understand them to be fake, conjured up for the sake of the challenge, the recognition is real. Casey genuinely is a lonely, frustrated teen, and she uses the pretense of the challenge as a way to discuss her struggles in her actual life.
It's like I can feel myself leaving my body. Like it's making me someone else.
JLB seems to be very knowledgeable about the extended lore of the World's Fair Challenge and offers himself to Casey as a guide through this world. In return, Casey ups the stakes, making progressively more intense and mature videos.
My father needs to go.
When Casey posts a video on New Year's Day describing an intent to kill her father, JLB's performed worry becomes a genuine one. On their next video call, he asks if they can go out of game, essentially breaking the kayfabe, to ensure she doesn't plan on actually carrying out the murder. Casey, either insulted JLB would doubt her or embarrassed to have taken things too far, shuts him down immediately.
They're just videos. What is wrong with you?
He pleads with her. She cuts him off,
That's not even my name.
hangs up, messages to call him a pedophile, and blocks him. We never see her again. Was it her real name? I took this for granted, but it's not like anyone else has been around to call her that. Lingering in the quiet after the call hangs up, it occurs to me that we've barely seen any of Casey outside of this online performance. In the back half of the movie, we don't see her unobserved for more than a few seconds at a time, as the game's fantasy has pulled far ahead of her lived experience, becoming far more fantastical. She has been pushing us away, denying us access. Maybe we never saw her unobserved, even in those early private moments. After all, a camera was always in the room. In the end, denying JLB and us access to her is the only power Casey has to exercise. The fiction of the World's Fair game is the only place she has agency, and the moment that agency is threatened, she looks into the lens, says, "You don't know the first thing about me," and prevents us from ever finding out. I think it's pretty cool. Still, I feel I understand Casey because I've basically been her. I was once an alienated 13-year-old posting videos to the internet for a tiny audience. Over the years, I made hundreds of them, thousands maybe, and definitely grumbled to myself about how few people seemed to care.
32 views.
When an older man started watching, who seemed to take my work seriously, it meant a lot. He validated that I had real depth to me, that I was mature for my age, that my pain was interesting. The two of us talked on and off for a little over 2 years. Once every couple weeks, he would message me thousands of words about his love life, movies he'd seen, jobs he had had in the past, and expect me to reply in equal detail. He'd wait outside my school sometimes. My relationship with this man was only sustained because I was in a life and body I found deeply disorienting. My school was this uptight, aggressively gendered place where nobody seemed anything like me. I barely showed up in mirrors. And here was this guy who thought I looked good, said I reminded him of his younger self. Being seen by him, it turned out, was not power. It was obligation and guilt and frequently fear for my safety or his. I eventually came to understand nothing good was coming of this relationship and chose to cut him off. Which took a lot of courage. I'm proud that I did it. But that was not power either. Blocking the guy, firing off a pithy email, felt good in the moment, but my isolation is what led me to him in the first place. The first queer adult to take me seriously. Once I got him to leave me alone, I was left with one fewer friend, but otherwise in the same position as when I'd started. I've been thinking about We're All Going to the World's Fair almost every day this year because I feel like I'm back there. These months of ceaseless attacks on trans life have dragged me, kicking and screaming back into my teenage self, small, helpless, and desperate to latch on to anything I recognize. The unique terror that defined my teen years has returned, the kind that comes when your life is completely at the whims of others and you have no idea what they plan on doing to you. I'm not who I want to be these days. I've been defensive, avoidant. I pick fights over nothing. Childish. One function of the tactics being deployed against this community, including forced outing, withdrawal of healthcare, and strip searches of children, to name only a few, is humiliation. The idea is to punish expressions of transness from so many angles that most people never feel able to acknowledge theirs. In such a state, trans spaces may continue to exist underground, but a given trans person will probably never find them, and instead remain alone, stunted, starved for connection. Anyone they do connect with suddenly finds themselves wielding a scary amount of power, being, in a way, that person's one tether to the rest of the world. The one job that'll hire them, the one doctor that'll see them, the one adult who understands. And don't get me wrong, that power can be wielded responsibly, but there's no reason it has to be. I used to think I slept through the cracks. I used to think the converging forces of homophobia, misogyny, and internet poisoning just happened to produce someone susceptible to grooming. While a less hostile society would have left me more self-assured and might have prevented this major trauma in my life, it was never in question for me that everyone in the world, no matter their political alignment, deeply regrets what happened to me. Everyone wants children to be safe. Since landing back in this child's body, the teeth-gritting realization I've come to, the one that's cost me hours of sleep, is that what happened to me was not an oversight. It was, in fact, the intended outcome of every policy and social norm which aims to make queerness an unspeakable matter. People working to exclude us from public life, whether they're in legislatures, on school boards, or hosting shitty podcasts, know that doing so will result in the grooming, abuse, and assault of queer children with nowhere else to turn. Their politics benefit from this. They want our first encounters with queerness to be violent. My heart breaks for the Caseys of today, who must have realized this so young. If you sit and talk with someone who really has it out for the trans community, and against my better judgment, I sometimes do, they'll be quick to tell you what brought them to that point. In conversations with these types of people, I hear the same few issues come up again and again. Trans people move too fast and tried to force our way into society without getting the public on board. Our initial demands were too extreme and threatened the safety of women and children. Taking these statements at face value, it would seem that we brought all this backlash on ourselves, either by demanding too much or by demanding it too early without building rapport with the public. Let's think for a second about where people get these ideas. I don't think it's from our presence in pop culture. The art about trans people that predates the backlash, shows like Pose, Transparent, Orange is the New Black, musical artists like Sophie, books from Janet Mock and Kai Cheng Tom, were all received pretty well. I doubt anyone who engaged with them were left more fearful than they had been. I don't think it's a failure of public messaging either, activists being too extreme or confrontational. Actually, I think trans people expend a ton of effort trying to explain ourselves to the public. So many of us spend time forging connections with people who don't get it, debunking myths, getting really personal about the details of our lives. The internet hosts thousands of surgery diaries in which people will vlog about the details of their genital situation from hospital beds. You don't bare your soul that way unless you really want to be understood. So I really can't stand for this claim that we were too harsh. Most of us are actually exceptionally patient. If anything, the limiting factor is that we aren't being heard. Most people are happy to passively receive information about us and base their opinions on whatever they happen to hear. For a while, that coverage was mostly positive, and then, with enormous investment from the religious right, the tides began to turn. Politicians were paid to scapegoat, lawsuits were filed that reached high courts, nonprofits funded anti-trans commentary to the tune of millions. All this, combined with a general rightward drift in the media, has meant that for the past several years, when the public hears about us, what they hear is they're ruining women's sports, they're invading women's bathrooms, they're sterilizing children, they're sexualizing children, they're putting litter boxes in classrooms, they'll send you to jail for misgendering. Did you just assume my pronouns? And I sexually identify as an attack helicopter. Which is to say lies. The public's image of trans people in this moment is a composite of things that did not happen. Since 2014's supposed tipping point, no trans athlete has reached the top of any sport, no clinic did bottom surgery on minors, and not a single person has ever been arrested for slipping up on a pronoun. While many people in our camp have worked tirelessly to counter this messaging, ultimately resources matter. A small and mostly impoverished community simply cannot match the combined reach of the New York Times, the Atlantic, the Alliance Defending Freedom, most news channels, and every conservative party on the planet. Theirs is the visibility that has really hurt us, and it wasn't our choice. So how could it be our fault? My point is that the odds are stacked against us. That's not new information, is it? If anything, it just makes it more tempting to go underground in some way. All that energy spent trying to reach the public could be diverted into getting us jobs, healthcare, places to live. At this point, I find myself pretty fed up with any organization that claims trans visibility as its primary goal. It's so out of touch with our needs. But for what it's worth, not everything public-facing takes that kind of energy. Lots of it is passive. We increase trans visibility when we hang out in the park or host a concert or post on the internet. Becoming truly clandestine, as some of us want, wouldn't just require ceding the public debate, but public space, too. It would force us to give up these small, life-sustaining moments. That's a difficult choice. I have gone on so many times about what being seen cannot do. But it can't be lost that even as public support dwindles, there is one group who we have unquestionably reached. Us. Our work in the public eye has helped an enormous amount of trans people feel able to come out. I mean, millions of them. More people come out now than back when things were easier. And not only are those people spared the misery of the closet, but now everyone they know has a trans friend or relative or partner who won't be able to ignore what's happening to us. It means more of us living outside of big cities, working non-traditional jobs, building bridges with all sorts of communities and movements. That is a tangible, meaningful win. That's a way that we are succeeding right now, even as things continue to get worse in so many ways. And the truth is, we might not be able to keep it up. Even if the community decides we do want to maintain a public face, things like bathroom bills, drag bans, and mandates forcing students back into the closet can and will take that choice away from us. There's something in the air. You feel it too. Allies are hesitating, institutions are complying in advance. The quiet we're getting is not the one we asked for. I am primarily describing the situation in the United States right now, but these backsides can happen anywhere, and they will. Complacency isn't something we can afford. So even if you think the community should be completely public in this moment, even if you personally want to be louder and prouder than ever in defiance of anyone who's ever tried to stop you, it's time to think about what you'll do if that ceases to be an option. A few days after the first big snow of the year, most of it already gray under tired treads, I trudged out to an event that 75 Shots was putting on in the back room of a bookstore. Alongside the usual film screenings, they'd invited a writer to come from the US for a conversation on stage. Her name was Unoma Azuah. She's a lesbian activist originally from Nigeria who, a few years back, published the country's first ever lesbian memoir. I actually have it right here. It's called Embracing My Shadow, and it is a wonderful read. Because the 75 Shots Collective emerged in response to anti-gay laws, a common topic of conversation at their events is how queer communities should behave in hostile environments, what to be outspoken about, when to recede. Being from Nigeria, where same-sex relationships can be punished by prison time, Unoma had a lot to say about this, and she was kind enough to repeat some of her thoughts for me on video.
The Nigerian LGBT community is vast and wide. Nigeria is the most populated country in the African continent. However, we connect across the length and breadth of the country. Our common cause makes us one big family. I wish I could add one big happy family to that. We're quite organized, or at least we try to be, regionally and then countrywide. In fact, despite the constant attacks that we get, we try as much as possible to stay out of the public eye, considering that our lives are criminalized. Nevertheless, some of us are visible as a way to humanize our lives and the lives of our kindreds. Visibility also helps us let those of us who are in the closet know that they're not alone. Sometimes, though, our activities in our own private spaces are leaked to the public eye. Then we brace for the impact and then re-strategize for safety. The upside of having a relatively discreet community is that we advocate and walk in peace. As long as lives are touched, empowered, and changed, the work goes on, and it's one step at a time, one brick at a time. The downside, however, is that we don't discover some of our other members who may be in dire need of community, of friendship, of affirmation, and of the resources that could help them live a more bearable life.
Unoma went on to describe how queer Nigerians find themselves and each other under these conditions.
In terms of finding ourselves, when we do find ourselves, we tend to rally around each other so as to connect and to stretch and spread like a net. One person meets another person and then introduces that person to their group of friends and vice versa. And we continue to expand and grow in that way. As we increase as a family, we exchange and share resources. These days, social media makes it quite easy to connect and be a part of larger communities. So all it takes to be absorbed in the community is to just one person. It takes one person, to become overnight, in some cases, part of a larger community.
Now, I'm not saying the situation in Nigeria where gay people can face prison time is the same as that here in Canada where I'm planning a wedding. There are obviously many differences. But the way Unoma describes a community stretching like a net, that can be done anywhere. In fact, I saw it happening right in that room as people trickled in. The events that the 75 Shots Collective puts on are not exactly clandestine operations. They're promoted online. Anyone can show up. But they are small, and deliberately so, as a question of safety. People invite their partners and trusted roommates, and the circle slowly opens up. I have to say, the regular attendees aren't just a deeply kind group of people. They're also strikingly diverse. People from nearly every continent show up. Teenagers and retirees, international students, refugees, and every time members call in from their home countries, often in the middle of the night. Together we catch up, eat, gossip, talk about our latest projects. One of the many things I've learned by stepping into the circle is that a community that operates covertly does not have to be a tense or hushed place. While the collective's films are marked by repression, they're also frequently love stories. And any space we gather to watch them in has a way of becoming, for a few hours, a family home. We know that what we have here is rare. Every frame of the films reminds us. And as such, we treasure it. I should mention that if any of this sounds like your cup of tea, you should come out, check out the screenings. I will link to their website and newsletter if you want to learn more. In much of the world over the last couple decades, queerness has grown ambient enough that it's easy to take for granted. Every time I open my phone, the sheer number of out people I'm exposed to, worse, the sheer amount of takes, makes each individual one feel disposable. If something irritates me even slightly, I feel comfortable tossing it aside and moving on, because there'll always be another one waiting. I don't think that's a luxury we can afford anymore. I want to ask more of myself, at least. I want to sink my teeth into the world a little more. And at these film screenings, that feels possible. There's something to be said about building spaces that take just a little bit of effort to connect with. Going to a 75-shot screening is not difficult. The tickets are cheap, they're usually in the middle of the city, but it requires just enough energy that those who do bother showing up tend to be curious, passionate people. Then the events reward us for those qualities. We get to watch avant-garde movies filmed on cell phones by regular people halfway across the world. That 1-inch barrier, it turns out, is also a pretty good security measure. Yes, anybody can show up, but people who are homophobic or transphobic are also generally deeply incurious. Why would they bother crossing town to yell about some weird film when they can easily harass people from their phone? This points to a way that trans people might be able to continue to exist openly without drawing the wrong kind of attention. Speaking in public, but only addressing each other. Saying things that our enemies, I don't know what else to call them, just won't be interested in. I think in music, trans women are a masterful example of this, building deep truths under layers of noise, shrieking it instead of singing. If their delivery turns you off, well, good, that's half the point. But if something about it intrigues you, makes you want to lean in and try to make out the words, then we're really onto something. Inspired by this talk and by all the people around me, I had been furiously typing all that into my phone for about 20 minutes before realizing I had gotten a little sidetracked. So finally, I just raised my hand and asked Unoma point blank, a lot of my friends want to disappear right now. What do you think we should do?
Yes, the case with North America and the demonization of the trans community is sad and tragic. Who would have thought that it will come to this? However, I don't think that the trans community should go on the ground. I'm not saying that they should not be cautious and safe. They need to be more careful, especially now. But disappearing should never be the answer. They should be themselves, be protective of themselves, be more vigilant about the spaces they navigate. But they need to stay fighting. There was a saying I read that, I don't know who said it, but it goes, now the climb has gotten steeper, but climb we must. There were times the queer community in Nigeria had to go on the ground due to constant attacks and threats. And we had to go on the ground to let the storm pass, so to say. But in the case of North America, the trans community have always had the space and the presence, so they should not give it away. Caution, however, should be the key word. disappearing, vanishing should not be an option to consider. I believe that this too shall pass. Thank you.
It is March 31st today, which makes it Trans Day of Visibility. That is a day that was founded in 2009 to celebrate the positive achievements of the trans community and to advocate for better media representation. It's never not been controversial, but this year especially. So back behind me is a counter program that has been organized today called Trans Day of Vengeance. The tagline is, "Fuck visibility, we want revenge." I caught wind of this through Instagram and I asked if I could come interview them, and they said yes. It's almost a little on the nose, all the flashlights they're waving at me. Jesus Christ. Okay. They've started firing flashbangs, which I take as a bad sign. A lot of people getting like bad vibes and leaving. The air smells terrible right now. It's like a stinging smoke thing. It really stings. Like it's hurting my nose and my eyes. I've never actually had this happen at a protest before. Police loudspeaker over there is saying that they're ordering the immediate dispersal of the protest. Dispersal and targeted operations. I have no idea why that's happening. It was a totally peaceful demo, and I assume less radical than they were anticipating. I lost track of them. They got way ahead. I think that's more tear gas going off. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus. Okay. There's cops that way. There's cops that way. There's cops that way. And there's cops ahead of me. Whew. I'll tell you what I thought I was going to be filming. I expected to be encountering a perspective on trans visibility that was a little maybe more hardline anti than mine, and to have an interview and to have that be an interesting little thing to consider in this conversation. And what I was met with was actually something I could much more straightforwardly get on board with. It was people chanting about protecting trans kids, and it was, oh my God, the tear gas is really irritating. It was the same things you see at any pro-trans protest, just defending the honor and dignity of trans people. And now I will not get to hear from the organizer because I assume they have either been tear gassed or arrested. Okay, I'm hearing the chants again. People in the area are briskly walking away. Oh, Jesus, they're coming this way. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, those are riot cops. Oh, Jesus. In Order to Not Be Here is technically a video essay, but not in the way you're probably thinking. Directed in 2002 by the experimental filmmaker Deborah Stratman, the piece opens with footage from a night vision camera tracking a group of police officers as they search for two people hiding in the grass. Over police radio, a technician guides the officers to the suspects, but only a rough outline of the conversation can be gathered through interference and static hiss. After some confusion, they eventually find and arrest the suspects. A title card plays. It is not necessary to be someplace else in order to not be here. From this point, the film is mostly exterior shots of suburbs at night. Town welcome signs, lampposts on narrow sidewalks, walls sickly blue under a cast of mercury vapor light. With no narration and little in the way of guidance, it's not immediately clear what to do with these scenes. It's so dark that little of them is even visible. But with the arrest still fresh in the mind, worries find their way in. Those men who are hiding in the grass, could there be others somewhere, just out of frame or drowning beneath the film's black point? But then the camera moves inside, and it's worse. The furniture is so small, the shots are so cramped. The even lighting in these spaces forces every object to the exact same brightness, so that shadows trail off just after starting or never land at all. Every internal space that's shown, a bakery, a convenience store, a family home, preempts any discussion of it with a full self-inventory, each one made slick and interchangeable under the dominion of endless day. The camera pans over a sleeping child. Returning outdoors, the world is as unsettling as ever, but it's gotten harder to pin on the shadows. The light itself, bursting from street lamps, is stark and overexposed, and the things it makes visible are every bit as hostile. The streets have no sidewalks, the fences are impossibly tall. A full half of most frames is occupied by rough asphalt. Humans are such an afterthought in these spaces that it's difficult to understand why they're lit up at all. Why bother? Why pump all this power in to illuminate utter blankness? So they can see you. The lights are not here for your eyes to form islands in the sea of night. They exist to ensure you don't try to sleep here or steal something or stand around for too long. Ever since you first cast a shadow on this earth, you have been the light's suspect. It got in your head early, turned you into a camera, conscripted you into its war on intrigue. All this time spent looking around for an assailant. What body is here but yours? After a while of this, the film cuts back to an aerial view, but this time it's not a police camera, but a disembodied eye. Someone is running. A sound collage of TV news and police radio gradually gets us up to speed on what's happened. It would seem this man has set his house on fire. On garbled interview tape, neighbors struggled to piece together a motive. He seemed like such a normal guy, they all say. Everyone is baffled. Reporters say he's still inside, but can't survive for long. He's done it. They lost him. He must have dodged the streetlights, popped a fence or two, and booked it. And now look at him go, through backyards and parking lots, under power lines, down train tracks. There's no slowing him down. He's impossible not to root for. In the film's final moments, our hero clambers down a hillside and dives into dark water. The camera follows for a while, but when he swims under tree cover, there's not much it can do. It darts around the canopy for signs, zooms in and out of details, looking for his mess of hair, an arm, a ripple. But they're the world's now. The best part of going missing is nobody... I have this friend named Sadie who spent the past 3 years begging me to watch the TV show Twin Peaks. Every time we talk, it's been, Lily, you would love it. Lily, David Duchovny plays a trans woman, and she's so hot. It's true. But to be honest, none of that won me over. What finally got me to watch was the irresistible pull of sweet, sweet content. The two of us have started a new podcast called TSTV, a Twin Peaks podcast. Every 2 weeks, we recap an episode of the show, dig into its themes and symbolism. I've been trying to predict what happens next by giving myself Twin Peaks-themed nightmares. It's a whole thing. I hope this sounds fun to seasoned fans, but even if you haven't seen Twin Peaks, I think there's a lot to enjoy. On our bonus show, TSTV DVD, we're talking movies, especially ones that strike that same balance of camp and surrealism. Our first one was on I Saw the TV Glow, and we just did a second with the one and only Jacob Geller. He had us watch The Straight Story, which is known for being David Lynch's most normal movie, supposedly. But to be honest, I think it's also my favorite of his. We're getting to the end of the first season of Twin Peaks now, so there is plenty for you to listen to. If you want to check out the show and get every bonus episode we ever make, you'll find it all over on Nebula. And to be clear, the mainline episodes are streaming everywhere, but Nebula gets the bonus episodes, and it also gets regular episodes a full 2 weeks early, so it's always one episode ahead. For that matter, Nebula also gets all my videos early and ad-free, alongside a bunch of bonus videos. You can catch me talking with one of my favorite directors about her work, or analyzing a painting to distract myself from ongoing situations. At this point, there's so much good stuff on Nebula that I kind of don't know where to start here. Tom Nicholas's documentary Boomers is an insightful look into the richest generation in history. Abolish Everything is a stupid good time. I feel very lucky to be a part of this thing. If you sign up with my link or with the QR code on screen, you can get 40% off an annual subscription and help me make more of this new podcast and more of these weird, deeply unmarketable videos. It comes out to $36 a year, $3 a month. Thanks, folks.